What up, yo? Welcome back to Forever Backlogged, the show where I review my gaming backlog as I go through it for your viewing pleasure. Now for today's video I bring you...
Oh man, your reviews are like totally sweet.
Why thank you, Eric. How nice of you to say. You know, I'm glad you stopped by because I have a feeling you're going to like today's review. No? Fine. Everything's always gotta be about you, doesn't it? Yes, this week I bring you South Park: The Stick of Truth. I was actually on the fence about reviewing this game at first, and I'll tell you why. I think it was Total Biscuit in one of his Steam sale overview type thingies that when he brought up this game he said something along the lines of, well, if you're a South Park fan, this game's already on your radar, so there's not much point in talking about it. And for the most part I agreed with that. Mind you, at the time I was aware of the praise this game was getting, but I had not played it myself. But then I would speak with a couple of my friends who, despite being big South Park fans, aren't huge gamers, so not very aware of critic reviews and such, and just assumed that this was another crappy franchise tie-in. And really, can you blame someone who is not on top of game news and reviews, who did not follow the hype behind this game at all, for being cynical about another South Park game, a franchise who already spawned the likes of these? So I felt I should review this game anyway, for those that might be in the same boat. Just start already. I swear to God, Cartman, one of these days. Matt Stone and Trey Parker, two of the best people to have ever been born on planet Earth ever.
These mics are fucking dumb.
First approached Obsidian Entertainment about developing an RPG set in the South Park universe in 2009. A rather odd choice, as Obsidian is not exactly known for having anything to do with the RPG genre. There was a very specific concept for this project from the very beginning, to create a game that looked and felt every bit like the TV series. The development process saw its share of setbacks, however, including the bankruptcy of THQ, the game's original publisher, which caused the release to be pushed back to 2014, now under the Ubisoft banner. It came out to a generally very positive response from critics and fans of the show alike. The Stick of Truth is a turn-based RPG done in a trademark cutout animation style of the show. It introduces you, the new kid, as the main character set out to make sense of a series of very strange happenings in this quiet little mountain town. The game plays very much like a traditional JRPG where you and a party of familiar characters take part in turn-based combat with a few quick time elements thrown in for good measure. It's very similar to Custom Quest in that regard. Now that I think of it, Custom Quest was also about a handful of kids dressing up and playing at battles much larger than themselves. Wait a minute. All the while, you pick up numerous side quests and interact with loads of recurring characters from the show en route to resolving the main plot. Now let me just make something perfectly clear before I give you my thoughts on the game, just so you know where my review is coming from. I am one of the biggest South Park fans you'll find. I mean, I adore this show. To me, not only is it the most original combination of crude, unapologetic humor and social commentary, but nobody else can even touch it in terms of remaining funny and relevant over the course of 19 plus seasons. This is very much a superfan reviews South Park: The Stick of Truth. And so, did it live up to the superfans' expectations? Fuck yeah, it did. Not only were the creators of the show the ones to have come up with the concept of the game in the first place, they were very adamant that they be directly involved in the development process. How involved? Well, they wrote the damn thing for starters, aside from also consulting on the design and voicing their characters just like in the series. They had become increasingly protective of their brand after seeing what had become of the first attempts at adapting South Park into video game form.
We hated those games so much.
And what do you get when you have the creators of the source material directly involved in the adaptation? It damn well shows. It feels like a cliche saying it at this point, but the game immerses you in the South Park world to a degree where it feels like you're just taking part in one giant episode of the show. The way some of the more core RPG concepts are translated into the South Park universe, how the character interactions are every bit the way you've come to expect them from the series, just everything feels on point. There's callbacks to so many elements from all the show's previous seasons that you can't believe how they fit them all in. That's what she said. And mind you, this is not done in a cheap fan service type way either, which is a recurring theme with this game. Everything feels made out of a lot of love and consideration for the original source. Even the most obscure of callbacks are placed in such a manner that the hardcores will rejoice, while being mostly inconsequential to the more casual fans. Perhaps most surprising of all is how well the game is able to poke fun both at itself and at a lot of the elementary concepts both of the genre and game design in general. What that means is, one thing you'll see across probably every review of this game is that it is absolutely a faithful adaptation. In fact, it stands very unambiguously as one of the greatest adaptations of any medium into video game form ever. In a world of disappointing cash grabs and downright shovelware level of crappy adaptations and tie-ins, to see a project such as this come to fruition is very, very refreshing. Okay, now, as for the gameplay, like I mentioned, the game tries very hard to follow a traditional RPG formula where you and your party level up through combat, discover new equipment and powers, unlock new paths and abilities, all the while keeping everything in line with the vulgar tone of the show. You get to interact with a surprisingly large number of recognizable characters and locales from the show. Even the most throwaway elements of the game will have some passing reference to something from the series. This is a facet that clicked with me right off the bat. Following through with the main plot or carrying out side quests for the very characters you love to watch is a joy that I cannot understate as a fan. Comparing that with carrying out chores for some completely forgettable NPCs in other games, man, I would gleefully seek out every character I could just to see what they had in store. Even the quests themselves remain relevant to the characters that give them to you, like Tweak asking you to get some freaky ingredients for his coffee, or helping the girl club uncover some super shallow gossip stories. And that's about as much as you'll get out of me. There's so many details I want to mention within the story and the game that make this such a worthwhile playthrough, but I want everyone to experience it without having the slightest hint of what to expect, just like I was able to do. Now, where you'll see some of the opinions start to split is on the combat and the depth of the gameplay. Some will say that the combat and strategy aspects of the game lack the depth you've come to expect from other RPGs. That and the overall lack of diversity when it comes to ways of actually playing the game. And these are fair arguments. The game does lack the depth and planning you see in other entries of the genre. I'll also concede that the difference in character classes is not really significant. To me though, these would hold more water if the player came here expecting a core RPG experience rather than a mix of immersion within the show's universe and the RPG element. I felt like the straightforward nature of the gameplay obeys the show's very tongue-in-cheek nature. There are things to enjoy as a fan even in the midst of battle. Taking you too much away from that in order to plan your next move would be kind of a shame. And really, I don't know how you would reconcile a much more complex fighting system with abilities such as throwing poo on your opponents. Is it a perfect system? No, not at all. Does it feel like it complements the game very well nonetheless? I would say so, absolutely. The biggest gripe I can name is that from a certain point on it is very easy to feel overpowered. But even then, I felt the combat remained just as entertaining and funny, with some enemies still being able to catch you off guard every so often. You might find the time button presses frustrating at times, but as soon as you get the hang of it really, it won't bother you anymore. Some might say that the setting will mask the game's lack of depth. I say that the game is kept complex enough to be very enjoyable while still enabling you to take in everything that happens around you at all times. And again, I could go on and rave about so many moments in the story or how fun it is to go along on all of the side quests. I mean, there are so many legit moments where I had to put the controller down and gather myself before continuing. But I owe it to you, if even only a South Park fan in passing, to spoil as little as possible for your playthrough. So, does that mean you should move South Park to Stick of Truth up or down on your backlog? This should come as no surprise by now, but if you're a South Park fan, you should move it up without any doubt. I would even say if you fancy yourself a big South Park fan, make it the next game you play if you have the chance. It's that good. If you're more of a casual fan and feel like you'll only get a novelty enjoyment out of this, I'd say it's okay to leave it in the back burner, but do try and make an effort to remain spoiler free in the meantime. And even then, I would try and get you to play this game as soon as you get any itch to try it. As I mentioned earlier, it was such a refreshing feeling to see a faithful adaptation for once. The attention to detail and love put in pays a great homage to a show with such an enthusiastic and hungry following. I mean, I can't recall the last time I was this sad that a game ended, and I finished every single thing there was to do. The announcement of a sequel was to me one of the greatest pieces of gaming news this year. Fractured butthole. Especially since it will be following the Kun and Friends storyline just as the fans were clamoring for after the Stick of Truth. Oh, one thing to bear in mind though, some European versions of the game were censored in some parts. Dig around and check what versions in your area are censored or not. I know that at least one way to get around it is getting the Steam version, which I guess nets you the uncensored American version. That's another episode done, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you keep coming back for more Forever Backlogged. Leave a like so I know you guys are digging the content, and subscribe if you want to keep track of new episodes as they come out. Also, feel free to drop me a comment. If you've played this game already, I'd like to know if you've enjoyed it just as much as I did, or if you haven't, if I've convinced you to give it a try. And that's it. Take care, everybody. I will see you soon. God, I was recording, wasn't it? Because that's happened once before.